Welcome to our webinar, Who is a Qualified Professional? We're going to be talking about vision rehabilitation therapists since this is Vision Rehabilitation Therapist Week. My name is Kendra Farrow and I am the project director for the Older Individuals Who Are Blind Technical Assistance Center. I am also a certified vision rehabilitation therapist. Before we jump into this presentation today, I would like you to think about your family members and yourself. If one of you was to suddenly go from having good vision to losing vision and not having any knowledge about vision loss, professionals, the services, who would you want to be providing your services? Would you want somebody who has had maybe 6 months of experience, on the job experience? Would you like someone who's been to a master's program and has a certification? I think we all want the best for ourselves and for our family members. The VRT or rehab teacher is the original blind rehabilitation professional. So back when there first started being individuals who did instruction for those who were losing vision, it was simply those individuals who were blind in the community who had learned to function well and had figured out ways to do things. Those individuals were hired and paid to go to the homes of individuals who were new to vision loss, and they simply provided the instruction in the techniques that they had learned themselves how to use to complete tasks safely. The field of vision rehabilitation therapy is quite small. I went to the CVRTB website where you can search the directory of those who are certified. And in the United States and Canada, there are just slightly over 600 CVRTs at the current moment. The scope of practice for a VRT is really important because it is the areas in which the professional has the most expertise, that they're best qualified to provide services in. When they practice outside of the scope of practice, which can happen, they're just not as specialized in that area, and it introduces a lot of potential risk to both the professional and to the consumer. For the professional, they're risking their certification because it goes against the code of ethics to practice outside of their scope of practice. And to the individual being served, they're not receiving the best services they could because the individual providing the services is not specialized in providing that service. So let's review the areas of practice for the vision rehabilitation therapist. First of all, they help with accessing printed materials, and this has a variety of skills and activities that happen related to accessing printed materials. It can be through Braille, it could be through optical character recognition, which is some assistive technology. It could be through audio format, so recorded using a digital recorder. It could be even use of low vision aids, so use of magnification to be able to see the standard size printed materials. Home and personal management. This includes cooking, cleaning, anything that we do around our homes on a daily basis to just do the things we need to survive each day. And it encompasses quite a lot. Medication and health management. This one is so important because if medications are not taken properly, if health conditions are not managed, then the individual is at risk for falling, for not being able to think clearly, and potentially even to die if there is something that's really done incorrectly. Basic orientation and mobility. Although we have another specialty called orientation and mobility, vision rehabilitation therapists can provide a good amount of orientation and mobility skills, which can be used inside their home. So usually the guidance is whatever happens inside the house is the scope of practice for the VRT, and what happens outside the home is usually the scope of practice for the orientation mobility specialist. And there are a few exceptions to that, one being probably human guide, which can be used indoors or outdoors. And the VRT is is skilled in being able to provide instruction in human guide. They also can provide instruction in orientation to space through use of sounds, visual cues, tactile cues. They can also learn to square off, to trail, to use the protective technique to not be bumping into maybe open cabinet doors or chairs that are sticking out from a table. So all kinds of things that relate to orientation, to space, and safe movement. Basic assistive technology. So although we have the assistive technology instructional specialists as a separate specialty, there are some beginning steps that the VRT can provide, and there is some overlap to that. So for instance, if an individual needs to learn to touch type, if an individual needs to download the app for the talking book program and listen to audio books, that's probably something that the VRT would be capable of doing to help the individual to access those printed materials. So it kind of bleeds over into the assistive technology, and there are quite a few things there that the VRT can also help with. Advocacy training. So this kind of goes with the next one, which is counseling and adjustment to blindness. And a lot of the things that the VRT does is education for the consumer in being able to understand their eye condition, how it works, and then helping them to explain that to their family members, which is the advocacy piece, because often family members don't understand, why can the individual function or do a certain task visually in this situation, but not in this other situation? And so that's where that advocacy and the education and the counseling and feeling like the individual is adjusted enough to their blindness to be able to have those conversations with their family members and friends is important. So professional preparation, how does someone become a vision rehabilitation therapist? First, they start with coursework at a university, and the coursework is done either virtually or in person. This is followed by an internship, which lasts for usually several months. In some cases, since there are so few certified vision rehab therapists that can supervise interns, some of the supervisors need to be remote and not at the same location as the intern. However, it is recommended that supervisor at the same location as the intern, but that isn't always possible. That is followed, the coursework, and then the internship is followed by a certification exam. And these steps are true for both the rehabilitation teaching degree and the vision rehabilitation therapy degree. So what are some benefits to hiring a CVRT or a certified professional? It helps to save the agency money. So you might think that's counterintuitive because you're paying them a higher salary, but that individual does not have a learning curve where they need to go through coursework that you might provide, or your staff training another person how to do it. It's taking their time away from providing services when you're using some of your other staff to provide them training. So when somebody is certified, when they come in your door certified, they're going to be able to hit the ground running with very little orientation to what their job duties are. The staff are equipped to provide comprehensive services, and the devices they provide will be appropriate to the individual's needs. One thing that often happens for professionals who aren't certified is that they equate services to being the provision of devices. So if I have given somebody a device and they have, for instance, a talking clock, well, now that proves that they've gotten services because I've been to see them and they've received that talking clock. There's evidence. That, however, is not the essence of services. The devices are not evidence. The instruction is what is the evidence of the service. And so we really can make sure when we hire somebody who's certified that those instructional techniques and strategies are being provided to individuals to make them self and efficient in completing tasks. We also reduce liability when we hire certified professionals. And that's in general. But let me talk specifically about the vision rehabilitation therapy professionals, because it's poorly understood how someone who is practicing as a VRT but is not certified, how that introduces risk. It's pretty clear with orientation mobility, because you're teaching people to cross streets, and if you don't do it correctly, you can die. But you can also die if you don't take your medications correctly. If someone doesn't give you good advice about how to organize your medications or a way that is sustainable for you. So another thing is use of the stove. A lot of us, it's not rocket science to do what a vision rehabilitation therapist does. However, there's a lot of little details about safety. So let me just give an example. When somebody is using the stovetop, the uncertified professional might put some bump dots on there and make sure that the individual knows how to set the temperature of the burner. But for a certified professional, they're going to go one step further to make sure that the individual knows how to center the pan on the burner, to make sure that they're understanding safety tips about using the stovetop. For instance, that if they need to set the oven temperature and they're using a magnifier, that they're not leaning across the burners to do that, because the burner could be on and they could accidentally burn themselves or start a fire because they were unsafe potentially doing that. And that's not the best way to see the controls at the back of the stove. It's really, a huge safety thing to be leaning over the burners to see those controls. So there's all kinds of fire hazards and burn hazards, also sharp knives. Vision rehab therapists teach people how to slice and dice, and do that using a variety of techniques and tools. So finding the right one that works for that individual. And then they have the knowledge too, not just about the slicing and dicing, but the knowledge about other things that can contribute to risk when you're using a sharp knife. For instance, if they're on a blood thinner, and that they're asking the appropriate questions to assess to make sure that that really is the best option for the individual. So instruction is also more likely to be comprehensive when you use certified professionals. When an individual providing service is not familiar with how to provide services or the devices used to do a certain task, they tend not to ask those questions during assessment. Let's give an example here. So one thing that a vision rehab therapist might do is teach someone how to use their power tools in the wood shop. And this is a totally, appropriate thing that falls within the scope of practice of a vision rehab therapist. However, if someone's providing service and they don't have the degree and they haven't had any instruction or knowledge about how to adapt the workshop, they might just not even ask about it. And the individual might say, well, I'm going to sell all my power tools because I can't do that anymore. And the professional who's not certified is not going to say a word to that. They'll just say, they might even say, well, that might be a good idea, because they don't know that it's possible. They don't have the skills, the ability, the knowledge to know what to do with that information when it's provided to them. Also, if you don't have certified professionals on your staff, you don't have anyone who can supervise an intern. One of the best ways to maintain qualified staff is to be able to supervise interns, because you need to replenish the people who retire or move on to a new position. So when you have individuals who are certified on your staff, you'll be more likely to be able to host interns who are looking for an internship location. And when you have that opportunity, you're getting an extra worker for a period of time. They're not expected to do all the things, and it will take a little bit of time from your certified staff to supervise them. However, you're introducing someone to your system, you're getting a good look at their abilities and strengths, and to know whether that person is going to be a good hire for you when they finish their internship. Often when people get comfortable, within a certain program and have those relationships established, it looks pretty attractive to stay there instead of going to another agency and needing to learn other policies and ways that services are provided through another organization. So It's a great way to have those opportunities to then offer positions to the new graduates who have completed their internship. So I've interviewed several CVRTs and one CRTB, and I want to introduce you to them. The first one is Sarah Nappy.
Well, welcome, Sarah. And why don't we start with an introduction? Why don't you tell me your name and the organization you work for and how long you have been in the field?
All right, so my name is Sarah Nappy. I work for the IRIS Network in Maine. I have been a certified vision rehab therapist for a month and a half.
Well, congratulations on being a new CVRT. We're really privileged to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
So how did you learn about vision rehabilitation therapy?
Well, my introduction to vision rehab therapy came because I have a visual impairment myself. I was receiving services from the IRIS Network, and they had a job opening, and I found out about the job opening and I applied. The job I applied for was to become a vision rehab therapist assistant. And what that meant was, while I was getting my degree from the University of Massachusetts, Boston, I had an opportunity to work as an assistant to some other certified vision rehab therapists and shadow them along the way and work in a limited capacity helping clients.
Thank you. What made you want to join the field?
I think what drew me to the field is that I wanted to help others with visual impairments to achieve the quality of life that can happen once you receive some training. Having a visual impairment myself, I felt like I was uniquely qualified to share some of the things that work for me. And if they don't work for my clients, I always can find another way to help them. So I think the biggest part is that it's a passion of mine. I wanted to help others.
That's great. I think we all want to help others in this field for sure.
Absolutely.
Describe the professional preparation program that you went through.
So I went to the University of Massachusetts, Boston. I completed a master's degree. So prior to, I had a bachelor's degree, and I went there for a master's degree. It was a fully online program actually, because of the pandemic, we only had one in-person session that was held in Vermont, and everyone from New England that was in the program went to the Vermont session and did some hands-on learning. But the rest of the program was fully online. There was a grant that I qualified for that made tuition less expensive. And it took 2 years to complete. And I was essentially a part-time student.
So how many credit hours did that add up to?
It was, with just VRT, it was, the total for the whole program.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm not sure what the total was for the whole program.
That's okay.
But each semester, it was the course load was such that I could carry on a full-time job with the course load.
So did you have like 2 classes a semester?
2 classes a semester. Yep.
Okay.
And then in the summer, when it was more condensed, I had 1 class.
What do you like about working as a VRT?
I like that every day is different. Every client is different. And I feel like I can sometimes predict my day and then new things come up. I also like that everything's always changing. There's always something new to learn in ways that we can help our clients. And I also like working with my team to come up with creative solutions for clients. If I can't come up with something, I always know that there's people at my agency who have excellent ideas that can help me as well.
That's great. And it's nice that you're in an agency or an office where you have other VRTs right there that you can ask questions of. So since you were working as a VRT assistant or providing some services prior to becoming certified or as you were becoming certified, can you talk about the differences in how it felt to provide the services before you started the training program or right as you were starting versus how it feels to provide services now?
Absolutely. So while I was a VRTA, a vision rehab therapy assistant, there were only specific things I could help clients with that weren't, first of all, they didn't involve any safety concerns. Mostly they didn't involve safety concerns. Some of the things I could help with were introduction to the talking books program, filling out talking books applications, helping with labeling, for example, labeling spices or clothing. What else was I doing? It was only a month and a half ago, but it feels like a long time ago. And all of that was provided under a CVRT. So it was always like part of they came up with the plan for our client. And then I would come in and they'd say, Sarah, why don't you go teach this lesson about, for example, the talking books program, or labeling or something along those lines. The difference is once I started to gain knowledge while I was in school through job shadow and becoming in the certification process, my scope of practice increased. I was able to do all of the things for clients, including, those kitchen skills, teaching clients how to cut safely with a knife, and labeling the stove top and things like that. I can definitely say through learning in school, I gained quite a bit of confidence in that education of my clients, because coming into the field, I wasn't sure necessarily about a lot of these techniques. And through watching the CVRTs I was working under and through the program at UMass Boston, we learned a lot of different techniques for different things, because one technique doesn't work for everyone. And if I only know that one thing, then I might not be able to help every client. I might not be able to assist in the way that fits their needs.
Thank you, Sarah. Do you have any advice for someone who might be thinking about getting their VRT, going through a VRT program?
I would certainly encourage getting certified. It certainly helped me gain confidence in the field, and I gained quite a bit of knowledge. And I felt like I knew, now when a client comes to me with something, I feel like I just have this breadth of knowledge about how to help them. And that connection to different resources and knowing all of the resources in my area, both like locally and nationally, that can help in many different ways.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for your time.
The next one is Eve Sanchez, and she is a CRTB.
Thank you for being part of this webinar, Eve. And I wondered if you could first start by introducing yourself, explain what your certification is and what agency you're with, and maybe how long you've been working in the field.
Hi, I'm Eve Sanchez. I'm with the Arizona State Independent Living Blind. I'm the program manager, and we run the older individuals who are blind program and help out with different VR services as needed as well.
And tell us your job title or your certification title, I guess.
I'm sorry, I am the program manager here. I am a nationally certified rehabilitation teacher for the blind. I received my license through the National Blindness Professional Certification Board, which is connected to the Louisiana Center for the Blind and La Tech University in Weston, Louisiana. That's where I received my education as well.
How did you learn about vision rehabilitation therapy, or in your case, rehabilitation teaching?
Well, I am blind myself, and I've always been legally blind, but I passed. I got to a point, though, some time ago where I needed to get my own training, my own services. And I attended training with the Idaho Commission for the Blind, and the rehabilitation teacher there, I'm not sure if she had any certification, but Lisa Baker. Well, we were both licensed social workers, and so she kind of really taught me a lot, not just as her student and what I needed to learn for my own personal blindness skills, but she taught me about the profession and just really motivated me to learn more, because was very intriguing and interesting.
That's how a lot of us got started, I think. So what made you want to join the field?
Honestly, it was just finding an enjoyment in it, because one thing that my instructor did when I was in training was a week and a half after I started training, she started putting me in charge of the classes. And I first protested. It's like, I'm here to learn my own blindness skills. I don't know how to teach anyone this stuff. I don't know this stuff. And she had to sit me down and explain to me something that I knew or should have known, that, hey, I've been blind my whole life. I know how to do these things because I've always made natural adaptations and accommodations. And I just need to pass that on and share with others. And it just really kind of piqued my interest at that time when she explained it in that way, just for me to say, oh, okay. And so then I went out and started teaching and realizing that, yes, the students who were my classmates were receptive to what I was showing them and explaining to them. And I realized that not only did I have the skill to do it, but it was fun. So, hey, I like doing things that are fun.
I think we all do. Describe the rehabilitation teaching professional preparation program that you went through at Louisiana Tech.
Oh, it's very in-depth. We start out in full immersion at the Louisiana Center for the Blind with all the other students and RSA clients that are there. We're under full blindfolds the whole time. It's a good 8-hour day, 5 days a week, plus various other activities. And that includes everything within home ec, wood shop, orientation mobility, computer skills, braille, doing other things such as going zip lining, horseback riding. Maybe they'll go to the Mardi Gras in New Orleans, going to other events, conventions for the National Federation of the Blind. And all of these things need to be under blindfolds. So it's very immersive. You learn how to do everything non-visually, and you learn how to just completely have your independence. Plus, at the same time, because you're doing that for a good 11 weeks, you're also starting your classes at La Tech, and it's the guidance and counseling master's degree with the focus on rehabilitation teaching. So then we have extra classes that are especially for our plan, for our degree. And let's see, it was a 14 or 16 month program. So it was fast paced and intensive.
And you were just focusing on going to school while you were going through this program?
Going to school and doing that. Yeah. And then we do our practicum at Louisiana Center. Okay.
And did you do an internship then too? Was that included in that time period?
Internship, practicum, basically that's what we're doing when we're working at the Louisiana Center, teaching and having a mentor in each area. We have to cover each area to be able to show that we can teach in those areas. And then we take exams that we have to study for and hopefully pass.
And you also had a certification exam.
That's what I mean, yes.
Yes, okay.
Very, very long, excruciating exams that ask, it's not just, I left one area out, we also do philosophy there. Even when we are out of immersion, we are expected to attend philosophy classes, which are 2 hours long, twice a week.
Okay.
And while we're in immersion, we have to write reports regarding our experiences in immersion, and then again the same thing for practicum daily. We turn in every week.
What do you like about working as a rehab teacher?
Meeting the different people where they are and being able to be a voice for them. As someone who came through the system myself and did not always have, I had some really good instructors, And I had some that really weren't quite so good, and some counselors that weren't quite so good. So I'm able to empathize with the position that my students are in and help get them through it, and be there for them, and to listen to their fears and their concerns and their triumphs. And it's gratifying.
Thank you. What would you say to individuals who might be thinking about going to a professional preparation program?
I think it is the best way to be prepared, to learn the system of how things work and learn from others, networking, getting those connections, because your colleagues, your cohort, those people are going to be there for the rest of your career as a support system for you. And when you don't go through that, you miss out on that network, and you miss out on the experiences of others that you would otherwise have. And so you may have a lifetime of experience as a blind person, maybe you have blind people in your family, but if you don't get the training and the mentoring and the modeling and get into that network and become part of that community, you're an island.
That is so true. So it sounds like you had a little bit of experience of providing services before you were certified. And I wonder if you can speak to the confidence level you had, or just if there were differences in your mind about providing services before you had your certification versus after you had your certification.
Definitely. Well, when I was unofficially teaching in my own training situation in Idaho, I had no confidence, and it was kind of coming to me as I was doing things. But that was just that was little. I actually did work a summer program once with transition kids, and this was before my formal education. And I had no confidence in what I was doing or how I was speaking about things. Or I remember it was a horrible experience, but it was no fault of anyone's but my own, because I was not prepared. And getting my education and learning through other people's experiences prepared me. So I'm much better now.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think that's really important, because a lot of us, that's how we come to the field. We know something about blindness and we start, working in the field, but we never take the time to really go to that program and get the preparation that would really make us an excellent teacher instead of just an okay teacher.
Right.
So
There's a difference.
I think that there is a difference, although I did not actually provide services prior to being certified. So I don't have that comparison in the same way you do. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure thing.
Our last person is Lachelle Smith, and she is a CVRT.
Thank you again, Kendra, for the opportunity to share a little bit about myself and about my love for VRT. I've been a practicing VRT for about 19 years. And within that time, I graduated in 2003 from, it was the College of, the Pennsylvania College of Optometry, which is now known as Salus University. And it was the profession of rehabilitation teaching, which is the same as vision rehabilitation therapy at this time. But yeah, it was 19 years ago. And what I'm currently doing now is I'm back at my alma mater. I am the program director for vision rehabilitation therapy and assistant professor in the Department of Blindness and Low Vision Studies at Salus University. That's what I do as my full-time job. So I direct and then I teach in that program and some of the other programs at Salus. And then also I work as a practicing in private practice as a certified vision rehab therapy. I consult with state agencies, with nonprofits, and with private, citizens who are interested in receiving VRT or consulting services related to blindness and low vision.
Thank you for that introduction.
You're welcome.
How did you learn about vision rehabilitation therapy?
Well, I will say I am a person who has low vision. I was born with low vision, and interesting enough, I never heard of vision rehabilitation therapy as a person with a visual impairment until I went to school for it. I first found out about this profession, that it even existed, by my assistive technology professional, who, when I was working in a totally different field, I was working as a patient service manager for Marriott in healthcare. So I was working in hospitals, managing the food service, like the tray line and then the retail. And I was having some issues with keeping up with the inventory, like their electronic systems. And so I had an AT specialist come in to work on some assistive technology so I can access the information on the computer. And she was saying to me, this does not seem like you. Have you ever heard of these professions, rehab teaching? I could see you doing that. And I'm like, rehab teaching, I've never heard of it. I heard of teacher of the vision impaired because I did have one as a child. I did not have orientation mobility as a student or a younger person. And so it was new to me. And so she told me about the Pennsylvania College of Optometry. She said, you should just go and speak to the faculty there. And I went there. But prior to going there, I did my research on the professional titles that she gave me, rehab teacher and orientation mobility specialist. I read about them, and rehab teaching just like stood out. And I'm like, oh my God, where was this as I was growing up? And so I researched it, and then I made an appointment with Maureen Duffy, who was the director of the rehab teaching program at the time. I met with her, and just as she described the profession, I was like, oh my God, this is me. This is what I would love to do. And I started the program and I never looked back. It was the best decision of my life.
So what made you want to join the field?
I grew up in a very service mentality family. So we were always serving, mostly in our church and in our community. And so it was like, oh my God, this could be my area of service that I can do. And so as Maureen described the profession to me, and just about the flexibility of where you could work, and it's not traditional. I was in management. I was in corporate America, which was very, very cutthroat. It was so opposite of how I think and how I wanted to live. It was very challenging to make decisions about other people's lives. And as a manager of like hundreds of employees, I always had to do that. And it wasn't what I enjoyed. And so just having the ability to be able to be of service to someone else, but also learn about it. Because one of the things that I was told when I was first, exploring the profession was like, oh my gosh, I learned so much from my clients. And I was like, wow, so that means you can teach and learn. I love learning. So it was almost like, this is too good to be true. And then I observed Maureen, and I was just like, this is it. So it was the combination of the description of what the profession was, and then my actual observation, and the fact that as a person who's vision impaired, I could potentially help them make a difference in the success of their own lives. Because if I would have known about VRT, there would have been a lot of things. I mean, I'm grateful for my opportunity of growing up and learning by, trial by fire. But why do we all have to do that? If there's somebody that can teach you, strategies and tips that can save you a lot of pain and struggle and worry. And, I wanted to be that for someone else, because I wish I would have had more of that, as someone who was growing up with that. So it was an opportunity for me to give back to my own people. So that's why I did it. That's what made me fall in love with it.
So describe the professional preparation program you went through at Salis to become a VRT or rehab teacher.
Absolutely. So as I said, when I started my personnel preparation program, it was the Pennsylvania College of Optometry, which is now Salis University. At that time, it was predominant. Actually, I think I only had one class online, which was at the very end of my program, but every class was face-to-face. And so I was provided a lot of courses that were, like I said, they were face-to-face. There were a lot of theory about blindness and low vision. And I have to tell you, as a person who is vision impaired, I lived, because I have low vision, I lived more sighted. Even though I'm, significantly vision impaired, you couldn't tell me that, because I was always around sighted people. I went to the mainstream school. So I was always expected to be able to do the things that sighted people did, whether I could or not. Where I grew up, I had to figure it out. Otherwise they were going to, put me in a different type of school, which I didn't want. And so I had to learn, so while I knew I was vision impaired, I accepted that to a certain degree of what my understanding was. I still tried to do everything sighted. And sometimes when I wasn't successful at it, it was more of, oh God, I'm just, I'm failing. So I was very hard on myself. But what I learned, I know I'm digressing a little bit, but it's the connection of when I went to the program, I began to take these courses in psychosocial aspects of visual impairment, the eye anatomy, understanding the technical function of the eye and what my condition was and why my vision was impacted. And then I started learning about foundations of ed and rehab and services to people who are blind or vision impaired that I had never touched, or had even been suggested to my family to assist me. I began to learn so much about this other community that I'm a part of, but that I wasn't living a part of. And so if anything, it just opened up my eyes as a person with a visual impairment, not only as a student, like, wow, all these services. It also just encouraged me to make sure I could absorb as much information as possible so that I could pass that on to my future clients. Because if I was born visually impaired and I've been in the educational system having an IEP and I didn't know about half these things, imagine adults, which I was going to predominantly work with, they don't probably know. My mother didn't know about these things. So it was just like, wow, I'm learning all this information. And then came the hands-on didactic courses of learning the adaptive techniques. Now, I did everything visual almost. I did use some touch and things of that nature, but I was the one that would put their face down to the stove. I was the one that would bring the knife up to my eye, right? And then I'm learning all these safety procedures, and it was life-changing. And it was really, and the faculty there were so knowledgeable and so patient. And so just, they loved what they did. And I think that was the most intoxicating feeling, is that, wow, these people really love what they do. I came from a profession where I hated what I did. And so now to potentially be in a profession that I'm actually loving it, and I'm seeing other people loving it, and they're collaborating with each other. It was an atmosphere that I loved my program.
This leads to my next question, which is, what do you like about working as a VRT?
Oh my gosh, so much. So first of all, I love the fact, as I've mentioned, about helping others to, giving them the tools and the resources and the information to live the best life that they choose for themselves. I love that impact of being able to be a stepping stone for someone else, empowering someone else. I can't do it for them, but I can help share the tools that they can do it for themselves and support them through it. So I think I love that teaching, that I'm a teacher at heart. I was playing school as a 5-year-old. So everyone in my family was like, I knew you'd be a teacher, even though I went totally opposite. But the other thing I love about it is the flexibility. I can literally work anywhere. So I'm working at the university, but I also do private practice. I can work as a consultant. I can work specifically as an instructor, teaching these skills. I can work in the VA for government. I can work on my own. I can work for the state. I can, there's so much flexibility, and it's not mundane. Every day is different. Every client, even if they present with the same, eye condition, some of the same struggles, how I adapt the skills for that person is different. So there's a creativity about it. There's an innovation about it. I also get to work with different people from different backgrounds. And again, because I like to learn. So I like learning about different people and different things. And so when I'm teaching a lot of my clients, they're teaching me as much as I'm teaching them. It might be different things, but it's something that I can take to the next client or to a future client. So I love that exchange. I tell my students, we have some expertise in the knowledge that we share. We are not experts. At least I don't consider myself an expert. I'm still learning. I'm still taking, continuing education classes. I'm learning from you, Kendra, and, for all the things that you're doing. So I don't go into there saying I'm an authoritative figure when I'm working with some. It's more of I'm a collaborator, a facilitator of learning, a partner. Because in rehab, our learners are really driving the bus. And so we are there to support them through it, to help, like I said, to give them those tools and the resources. But ultimately, it's their choice. And we have to empower them, give them the tools to empower them to make that choice and not make it for them.
That's great. What would you say to individuals who are considering getting a degree or coming into the field of vision rehab therapy?
I would say, come on, let's go. There's multiple schools out there. You know, I love Salis. Absolutely. I would love to have you at Salis, but there are other great schools too. You know, the important thing for me is vision rehab therapy is just a wonderful profession, not only because it is a service profession. So what I do tell people who are interested in the field, you have to have a servant's heart, because what we do is, while it is technical, while it is, you know, there are structures involved, there's also an emotional component to it, because you are impacting somebody's life who's vulnerable. We work with vulnerable populations who are going to go through a myriad of emotions through the rehab process. So you can't be so rigid. You have to have a servant's heart. A lot of what we do sometimes is not always recognized, right? And so we have to know that what we're doing for the betterment of others, and something that connects with our own values that we want to give back to a community. Right now, I mean, the number of individuals who are visually impaired is growing. And we do not have enough professionals to meet that growing need. So I implore you, just check it out. One of the things I also recommend when people are interested, I'm like, just come shadow a VRT and maybe a couple of VRTs to see what the work looks like, to see if that's something you can envision yourself doing. And also understanding too that you do need to get training for it, right? So, you know, don't always jump at an opportunity. Well, this is interesting, I want to try it. On the job training is wonderful, but we have theory and practice. We're a profession, and so we have theory and practice that go hand in hand. Practice without theory and understanding the why. We can teach people skills, but if we don't know why, and we're not teaching them why they're doing it, they can't transfer them skills from task to task. And so in our profession, sometimes, you know, people are like, oh, I'll just try this. Get some training. You know, I still take classes when I need to learn some more content or improve on an area. Like AT is one of my areas that I'm constantly having to improve on. So I think those are all great reasons to become a VRT, and you'll be a part of a family that is one of the most welcoming, warming, fun families that you'll have outside of your own.
In conclusion, I'd like to talk about how supporting VRTs is also supporting the whole field of vision rehabilitation therapy and the whole field of blind rehabilitation. So VRTs, I think, are the glue that holds it all together. With the broad scope of practice that a VRT brings to a program, you have the ability to really identify the needs that consumers have, because the VRT is often the gateway to providing the referrals needed to the other specialists on the blind rehabilitation team. I heard a story just the other day from a professional who is certified, and she was looking at some case notes of her coworker who's not certified. And she saw in the notes clear indications that would normally trigger an O&M referral, and yet an O&M referral was never made because the individual, the professional, was not certified and did not pick up on the cues. So the information was clear enough that it made it into the case documentation, but it did not trigger that referral. And that's the kind of thing that happens when we don't have certified vision rehab therapists on our teams. So encouraging certification helps to grow the field. So if we are getting these specialists that really encompass everything that we do and touch all those different pieces, we're getting the referrals to the other professionals, which shows, you know, we're doing more comprehensive services, which looks really good. And it helps the whole team to feel better when we can do comprehensive services as well. So it's building up the entire field, because it's showing the need for the orientation mobility, for the assistive technology instructional specialists, for the low vision therapists. So it's a good thing all the way around for the program. To conclude this presentation, I wanted to just reflect a little bit on some of the things I found to be particularly fun about being a VRT and just rewarding. So if you're someone here today at this webinar and wondering whether this is something that is for you, I hope that some of this reflection will encourage you to come into the field. So first of all, each workday is unique. There's never one day that's exactly like another day. You meet so many different people with so many different eye conditions and so many different situations and goals that it just makes for a huge variety in what you do each day. I got to use a lot of creativity and problem solving. And I love that it made me think that it's, again, back to things not being the same. So each situation is unique and you have to find that new and creative way to address problems. It's also fun to see changes in people's lives, to see them regain hope that they can do things when they first lose vision and they think that they can't do much, to turn that around for them. And sometimes it doesn't take very much and they're off to the races and doing all kinds of things that even you might not have imagined they were going to do. It also, you're making a difference in the world and in people's lives for their world. Just the way they are able to, find that new purpose and meaning in life after they thought nothing could help them. It's just making such a big difference, and it can make you feel so good as a professional. So I just encourage you to, if you're not a VRT, that you would think about coming into the field. And if you are a VRT, but you're not certified, I hope this will encourage you to consider becoming a certified VRT, because, having all this knowledge and skill will just make you feel more comfortable and proficient in being able to provide services. And at the end of the day, I think you will see that you make a bigger difference in people's lives because of it. Thank you for attending the webinar today.